That's kind of...
I know, the third eye. Mark's been telling me for years.
All right. It's true. All right, we're gonna.
The original animated classic premiered back in 1937, and it unmistakably reflected the mindset of its time, centering heavily on romance and the idea of a young woman waiting to be rescued by a prince. That version of the story was built around dreams of true love and happily ever after endings defined by marriage. Fast forward to today, and the character is being reimagined with a completely different focus, no longer longing for a prince, but striving to become the leader she believes she was always meant to be. That shift alone has sparked heated debate, but it's only one part of a much larger storm that has been building. Over the decades, Hollywood has seen countless stars rise to fame at lightning speed, only to face intense backlash just as quickly. Some were fairly criticized, others arguably became victims of public overreaction. But every once in a while, someone comes along who seems destined for superstardom until controversy begins to follow them everywhere. That's exactly what happened with Rachel Zegler. Her career once appeared to be on an unstoppable upward trajectory, but a series of past comments and public behavior soon resurfaced and changed the entire narrative around her. What once looked like a Cinderella story began to resemble a cautionary tale. Now the question on everyone's mind is simple but brutal. Is this the beginning of a permanent downfall, or can she somehow pull off the ultimate comeback? Before diving into how everything unraveled, it's worth pausing for a moment, because stories like this don't just survive on headlines, they thrive on audience reaction. Viewers play a direct role in shaping which narratives grow and which ones fade away. Support, engagement, and attention are the real currency of the internet age, and without them, even the biggest stars can disappear faster than they appeared. So how does someone who seemed to have everything working in her favor suddenly become the center of widespread public outrage? In the early stages, many of Zegler's missteps could reasonably be chalked up to youth. Like many young performers, she was navigating fame for the first time while also growing up in an intensely polarized political and cultural climate. Emotions ran high, opinions traveled fast, and every statement carried far more weight than it might have a decade earlier. But as time went on, her habit of openly criticizing the original material connected to the projects she was working on became a recurring theme, and that pattern steadily alienated a growing portion of the audience. She didn't just ease her way into stardom, she burst onto the scene. When she appeared in West Side Story, she wasn't simply introduced as another promising newcomer. Almost overnight, she was positioned as the industry's newest breakout star, praised for her talent and celebrated as the next big thing. Momentum kept building when she was cast in the live-action adaptation of Snow White, a role that traditionally represents peak Disney stardom. At that point, it truly felt like nothing could stand in her way. Every opportunity seemed bigger than the last, every headline more glowing than the previous one. But as the saying goes, the higher you climb, the harder the fall. Public perception can shift with terrifying speed, and once doubt begins to spread, it tends to grow faster than success ever did. In Zegler's case, the backlash didn't come from a lack of ability, her talent was never the main issue. Instead, it was her public attitude, the way her words were interpreted, and how audiences felt those words showed a lack of respect for the very projects that created her fame. Whether fair or not, the internet quickly decided on a verdict, and that verdict spread across social media like wildfire. Let's address the elephant in the room, the growing list of controversies that have turned so much of the public against Rachel Zegler. For quite some time now, it feels like few rising stars have managed to attract this level of widespread hostility so quickly. What really ignited the backlash was her perceived disrespect toward the original animated Snow White, along with a series of comments that many viewers found dismissive, arrogant, or even mocking. As people began digging through her recent interviews and resurfacing old social media posts, critics pointed to moments where she appeared to downplay the legacy of the character, speak condescendingly about the source material, and repeatedly frame herself as the misunderstood victim of unfair criticism. One particular press interview clip went massively viral on TikTok, where her tone struck many viewers as less fairytale princess and more sarcastic antagonist. The way she joked about the original Disney classic being outdated or weird deeply rubbed fans the wrong way, especially those who grew up loving the film. Almost instantly, hashtags like Not My Snow White began trending, signaling just how fast the narrative had turned against her. But the controversy didn't stop with interviews. Old tweets were quickly dug up and circulated, with users accusing her of hypocrisy, moral grandstanding, and pushing messaging that now felt preachy or tone-deaf to large portions of the audience. One particularly explosive post came from her Instagram account, where she made aggressive political statements about Donald Trump and encouraged followers to vote along specific political lines. She even suggested that anyone who disagreed should simply unfollow her, framing the issue as a moral battle over rights and values. While some supporters applauded her bluntness, others felt alienated, attacked, or lectured. Those same old posts were then endlessly dissected in viral TikTok breakdowns, often paired with dramatic captions questioning her judgment. When thousands of strangers are analyzing every sentence you've ever posted, it becomes the digital equivalent of pouring gasoline on an already raging fire. Social media has amplified the entire situation in a way that simply didn't exist for previous generations of celebrities. Platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and even Reddit have turned her controversies into non-stop trending drama. Fans are now completely split down the middle, some passionately defending her as a young woman being unfairly targeted by internet mobs, others arguing that her own words and attitude created the backlash herself. The media frenzy only made things worse, with her name suddenly appearing in heated discussions about casting controversies at Disney and the company's larger creative direction. And that leads to the bigger question hanging over everything now: is this truly career-ending behavior? Or is it just another internet pylon that will burn itself out within weeks like so many others before it? Public opinion is volatile, and the same crowd that rushes to cancel someone today can just as quickly move on to a new target tomorrow. Still, once trust is damaged on this scale, rebuilding it is never guaranteed. All of this has forced audiences to re-examine the clash between the modern reimagining of Snow White and the original 1937 classic, an era where the story revolved around romance, innocence, and a princess waiting for true love. That sharp contrast between past and present has become the symbolic heart of the entire controversy.
What's really interesting is that Zegler's fall from grace has been a very satisfying watch for plenty of people.
In this new version of the story, she isn't waiting to be rescued by a prince, and she isn't dreaming about true love anymore. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she believes she can be. The old idea of romance, especially one involving a prince who secretly watches her from the shadows, has been heavily criticized and deliberately pushed aside. And honestly, many people looked at that original dynamic and said, yeah, kind of weird. Really weird. So this time around, they made a clear decision to do things differently. But whether that change helps or hurts the backlash is a much bigger question than it first appears to be. With the criticism continuing to spiral, it's now fair to ask the uncomfortable question: can Rachel Zegler actually come back from this? Because right now, what once looked like a fairy tale career is starting to feel like it's teetering on the edge of collapse. Almost overnight, quiet whispers about strained relationships inside Hollywood began surfacing. Industry insiders are now allegedly questioning whether casting her as Snow White was ever the right move in the first place, especially as Disney continues to struggle with keeping its live-action remakes relevant to modern audiences. Nothing has been officially confirmed, but rumors of delayed, paused, or quietly cancelled projects continue to circulate. And as the saying goes, where there's smoke, people assume there's fire. What makes this moment especially dangerous for Zegler is Hollywood's long and brutal track record with cancel culture. It's a machine that operates without mercy and without predictability. Some stars take a hit and come back stronger than ever, while others vanish almost completely from the spotlight. Take Johnny Depp, for example. After years of legal battles and public controversy, he managed to engineer something resembling a redemption arc, largely because of his massive, decades-long fan base. On the other hand, someone like Armie Hammer saw his career practically collapse under the weight of scandal. Whether a star gets a second chance often comes down to timing, public sympathy, and most importantly, how they respond when everything starts going wrong. And in Zegler's case, that response has been a mixed bag: apologies here, moments of apparent defiance there, and long stretches of awkward silence in between that only fuel more speculation. Hollywood has always had its share of performers who became deeply disliked, whether they truly deserved it or not. But in this case, even aggressive marketing couldn't turn the tide. The studio pushed hard, trying to sell both Rachel and the Snow White remake at the same time, almost pleading with audiences to embrace them. And yet, many people simply refused. Instead of calming the situation, each new interview or promotional appearance seemed to add another layer of irritation for critics. Rather than extinguishing the flames, her public presence began to come across as dismissive, defensive, or simply difficult to root for. That's especially damaging when your entire brand is supposed to be built around being relatable, likable, and fresh-faced. And now, Rachel Zegler finds herself squarely in the crosshairs of an audience that feels completely fed up. Whether that anger is truly directed at her as a person, at Disney as a corporation, or at the entire live-action remake trend as a whole is still up for debate. What's clear, though, is that she has become the lightning rod for all of that built-up frustration. In many ways, she may be serving as a scapegoat for much larger creative and cultural problems, but that doesn't lessen the intensity of the backlash she's facing. When audiences reach a breaking point, they don't always aim carefully. They strike whatever symbol feels closest to the source of their disappointment. Still, all is not lost, at least not yet. A loyal segment of fans continues to stand firmly in her corner, arguing that much of the criticism is exaggerated internet drama, fueled by outrage culture rather than facts. They point out that she's young, undeniably talented, and still very early in her career. From that perspective, this could just be a rough chapter rather than the final page. Youth has a way of buying time in Hollywood, and talent has a way of reopening doors that controversy tries to slam shut.